For 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Only in Washington can you hear people say that it's irresponsible to balance a budget. I actually heard Democratic leaders on TV this weekend complaining that it would require a supermajority vote to raise taxes on the American people, but only a majority to cut spending. Well, maybe some people have been in Washington too long to realize it, but the American people want to tie Washington's hands and make it easier to cut spending than raise taxes. They want to cap the growth of government. They want to require a balanced budget. For decades, we've heard excuses for why Washington's special and shouldn't be forced to balance its budget. It's time to tell those people that their scare tactics are over. This is a new day. In America, the people are sovereign, and today the people demand accountability. They demand a responsible, constrained government. They demand a balanced budget. Clearly, Washington is never going to choose to balance its budget, so the people demand that we force it to. 49 out of 50 states have some form of a balanced budget amendment. If 98% of the states know this is a wise plan, why do Washington politicians fight tooth and nail against it? The answer is plain and simple: power. They will try to scare the American people any way they can to avoid losing power over this massive, bloated bureaucracy. They will say today that they must have this power, else they can't keep taking care of people. They will try to scare seniors into continuing their unrestrained power to borrow. They say they will manage their borrowing power wisely. They will restrain themselves. Well, talk is cheap, and I've heard this same line for decades. What matters are results. How have Washington politicians been managing their borrowing power? One number will tell you: $14.3 trillion, the amount of our deficit today. A balanced budget amendment is essential because the government has shown time and time again that until we restrain its spending with fiscal handcuffs, the problem will continue. President Obama has only made our spending problem worse by adding $3.7 trillion to the national debt in just 2 years. The President has spent more money in less time than any other leader in American history. Last week, President Obama told Republicans, "Don't call my bluff." Well, I, for one, think this game has gone on long enough. The power needs to be restrained. As Lord Acton famously said, all power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Today, we fight back against this corruption of absolute power. Today, we stand with the American people. Today, we vote to return the power to the people. We invite President Obama to get on board, oppose this runaway spending, and pass a balanced budget. 5 years ago, he agreed. On March 16, 2006, then Senator Barack Obama stood in the well of the Senate and said, "The fact that we are here today to debate raising Americans' debt limit is a sign of leadership failure." He spoke of the, quote, common sense budgeting principle of balancing expenses and revenue. But then, 5 years down the road, unfortunately, President Obama is singing a different tune. He has demanded more borrowing authority with no strings attached. When his own party voted against that proposal a few weeks ago, he started telling us that we must raise the debt ceiling and called our common sense budgeting reforms gimmicks and radical. Well, here's what I'm hearing from people in Missouri, my district. That's where common sense is. Here's Reggie from Adrian, Missouri. Raising the debt ceiling is like handing 5 more credit cards to someone who has already maxed out 50 other credit cards and then sitting back and saying, "You fixed the problem." How dumb would that be? Here's from Michael in Sedalia. Don't give in. As a veteran receiving a pension, I continue to stand behind you and the House leadership in expecting meaningful spending cuts before raising the debt ceiling without raising taxes. Taxpayers don't like what's going on, and we aren't going to sit by and watch anymore. Here's from Margaret from Lake Ozark. A minimum of $4 billion over 10 years is a drop in the bucket. We also need a constitutional amendment since our leaders can't seem to stop spending and do the right thing. Do the right thing now. Here's from Judy from Warsaw, Missouri. The very idea of increasing the debt limit to get us out of trouble is absurd. You cannot borrow your way out of trouble. Deal with it. Cut the pork. Mark from Camden, Missouri. We have always had to live within our means, and it's time for the government to do the same. We can't have everything we want. The government needs to be reduced. I do not think my children and grandchildren should pay for our lack of responsibility. Larry from Conway, Missouri. This is a turning point in history. I agree. Let's do the right thing. Today, let's pass cut, cap, and balance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlewoman's time is expired.